I'm still scraping the NES catalog for GIFable images, and writing down my thoughts as I go. Here are those thoughts recorded and synchronized to relevant gameplay footage, in order to bring you the definitive guide to the Nintendo Entertainment System. Baby Boomer likes to neglect its children, and the game is also pretty brutal. You need to build bridges and avoid being euthanized, all while blasting through 9 levels with the controller or zapper, or both for some couch co-op. And it's even easier today thanks to the computer mouse and touchscreens. So don't abort this game yet until you at least tried pointing your gun at it a few times. Back to the Future looks like they developed a vertical shooter, then retrofit it with their newly acquired movie license. You need to pick up a bowling ball before you're able to fire, and stealing a skateboard is no longer a misdemeanor, but lousy controls, overwhelming death threats, and crappy minigames make this one flashback you're better off avoiding. Back to the Future 2 and 3 is more ambitious than its first entry, but way less approachable. You're given no info on where to go or what to do, with keys appearing out of midair, and hamburgers running down the street. And there's these rooms you can enter that look like they were lifted from another work in progress. But the wonky controls and terrible design choices make this painful to go back to. Bad Dudes is a crappy port of the arcade game Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja. The NES version feels like you're controlling a stop-motion video, and doesn't have a cooperative 2-player mode, which is false advertising. The object is to punch and kick a bunch of flickery sprites, so that you can rescue the president and grab a burger, so nobody really wins. Bad News Baseball is good news for anybody who likes a suitable NES baseball game, with lots of statistics. It lacks in hustle and artificial intelligence, but it's still more than playable as long as you can accept that all of your fielders are physically disabled. At least you can perform a sex change by holding down buttons and resetting the console, cause that was a bonus feature worth hiding for some reason. Bad Street Brawler is more than your average street brawler, where you play as a registered sex offender in booty shorts that goes around molesting midgets and wild animals. The flamboyant graphics and driving soundtrack complement his weird movesets, which change after each stage, and swings a little differently. So make sure to beat the meat before heading out to the street. Balloon Fight is a cross between Lunar Lander and Joust, with the added benefit of simultaneous 2-player. The A button is used to manually flutter, while the B button can be held for a steady flap. There's an extra 1-player mode called Balloon Trip, which is all about seeing how far out you can get, while avoiding a buzzkill. Balloon Monster is a completely unplayable knockoff of Buster Brothers. The main problem is that the bubbles keep bouncing lower after you pop them, making it impossible to get underneath after about 6 seconds. It had a standalone release by Gluk Video in '91, and made its way onto various multi-carts, and even got a revision, fixing absolutely nothing in the process. If Banana Prince were a Smash Brothers character, he'd be the one that nobody plays because of his strange moves, like the banana shovel, and the peekaboo pussy crawl. I wish his normal jump was as effective as the tree lunge. And you can't move the screen backwards. They probably made this game different just to stand out among so many platformers. But why do they keep telling me to die and calling me an incel? Bandai Golf is a serviceable golf game with a nice overhead view and cross-section that gives you a reasonable level of detail within the limitations of the console. The resolution when aiming to drive your ball is a little low, but can be offset by slicing or hooking the ball. And you need to know your clubs before hitting the green, as the projected distances aren't shown on screen or in the manual. Bandits of China is a text-based war game, where you'll spend the first year using the build command, and the next 5 years recruiting peasants from downtown to assist in the revolution. I spent several hours watching tutorials and learning all the commands, just to inform you that it's still kind of engaging if you can fast forward through all the rotations. And ignore how far strategy games have come over the past 30 years. Barbie's figure is disproportionately large, just like in real life, but the stages generally agree with her slow walk speed and fat movements. It kinda plays like a boy and his blob, where you toss treats to make things happen. I had fun tripping through Barbie's acid adventure, probably out of novelty, but no, I'm not gonna actually recommend this. The Bard's Tale is a lengthy dungeon crawler with cool music and a good battle system. It takes a bit of patience to navigate menus and level up, and there's an annoyance of having to pool gold among characters. This can actually be exploited by making a bunch of fake profiles and then stealing their money to buy equipment, just like with any other social media account. Barker Bill's Trick Shooting features 3 zapper games, where you destroy dinner plates, shoot falling garbage through the window, and pop balloons that hobble around like marionettes. The 4th mode is a compilation that contains 2 extra games if you're going to progress far enough. Glad to see the Duck Hunt dog making an appearance, and you can actually shoot him this time. Base Wars Cyber Stadium Series is a baseball fighting hybrid where you're allowed to beat up your opponent long after he's dead. Hitting the ball feels random at best with its weird trajectories, and a screen scroll that can't keep up. The fighting was clearly still in development upon release, making Base Wars an unfinished battle. Some of the features in Nintendo's baseball are implemented decently, such as pitching, batting, and base running, but frustration occurs when it comes to playing the field. This set a precedent for decades to come, of CPU fielders struggling to communicate who has the ball. Play as the Houston Astros to enable cheating. Baseball Simulator 1000 is definitely on the arcadey side, with its powered-up ultra pitches, ultra swings, and ultra fielding. Just make sure to pick a team in the Ultra League if you want to get the most out of it. Or you can choose to play without any performance enhancers, which will make it indistinguishable from every other NES baseball. Getting on base with baseball stars is a bit tougher, and probably more realistic. The pitching has more sensation behind it, and the hands-off approach to fielding allows you to control them more, at the expense of missing easy pop-ups, which may be out of your league, so choose baseball stars if you want a more simulated experience. Baseball Stars 2 is like the previous title, except with a blue field. Both of these games come with the league and team creator that you can set up if you want to pretend like you have friends. The abrasive looping music that accompanies the gameplay is a put-off. That and some other bullshit. So I would just stick to the first game. Bases Loaded takes a different approach on how to draw athletes holding a baseball bat. Not being able to move around the batter's box makes hitting feel stationary. I would have liked to see less downtime between batters too. At least the celebrations are kinda funny. But I didn't load this baby up to watch cutscenes. Bases Loaded 2 was a step in the right direction, with more responsive controls and a better view of the field. The players have a little bit more hustle in them as well, but still don't communicate when it comes to midfield fly balls. Maybe they have trouble hearing each other over the loud piercing music grating through the sound system. Bases Loaded 3 continues to experiment with camera angles, but it's a bit too tight for the fielders to get a handle on the ball. You can finally move around the batter's box, but don't expect it to increase your hit ratio, as the CPU knows where the ball goes. Bases Loaded 3 is officially endorsed by Ryan Sandberg, so you know at least one more person purchased it. It took 4 iterations of Bases Loaded before they finally coached the players on how to hold the bat properly, and they can finally move around the batter's box on both axes. But the fielders have also been given a wider margin when it comes to making outs, as if it weren't difficult enough, and this includes line drives and ground balls. 1 step forward and 1 step back equals Bases Loaded 4. The NES version of Batman tells the story of Bruce Wayne's crippling gout and his inability to walk properly. The controls aren't terrible, but they're definitely the limiting agent when it comes to jumping and wall grabbing, which can be overly precise in some locations. His weapons are pretty effective, and that includes batarangs, a spear gun, and a spread shot. Return of the Joker returns with Sunsoft's signature sticky feet engine, and this time with larger sprites and poorer hit detection. Publishers love big sprites because of how good they look in screenshots. Developers hate them because it drastically reduces the look ahead and lowers the player's potential to react, and makes progress impossible without strict memorization. Batman Returns was developed by Konami, so it uses their Ninja Turtles engine combined with code from the previous Batman game so that nothing controls right. Clunky movements and lazy hit detection plague this entry too. Empty environments, shadows that look like holes, and the lack of two-player further my contempt for this game. Battle Chess contains no actual battle controls or combat, just long drawn-out animations and incredibly slow movement. This can be mitigated by changing the board into 2D in the settings, so it was clearly a design choice, and not a limitation of the NES console. Any video game with less features than its real-life counterpart should be banished from the annals of history. Battle of Olympus may look like Zelda 2, but plays more like the Battle of Cancer. You start with a shield that can't block, and a nubby little dildo with no reach. Things start to pick up later when you actually find equipment and know where you're going. But most of the early game is talking to useless townspeople that live by themselves with no furniture. Battle Tank highlights the ugliness of war and the NES color palette. Finding enemy tanks to blow up can be tedious at first. Hold B while pressing up and down to change speed, and press select to switch weapons. You can traverse faster with the map open. Not sure if this is a glitch or a feature. It works well considering the limited amount of buttons on the controller, but don't worry, it still sucks. Battleship is based off the board game with a few novelties carried out. You start with 4 ships, each equipped with a special one-time shot that does damage in different patterns. Every 5 missions adds something new to your arsenal, whether it be an aircraft carrier, a new missile, or a new sonar. The game does what a video game edition is supposed to, and for that, I commend Battleship. Battletoads tried to capitalize on the Ninja Turtles craze in the early 90s, but sent children into a fit of rage with its unapproachable expectations, like Level 3 the Turbo Tunnel. The only thing that Battletoads has going for it is the variety of mechanics littered throughout its 12 levels. But even 2 players in secret warp zones can't erase this traumatic experience. Battletoads and Double Dragon team up to battle a PR crisis, after previous titles had kids on suicide watch. This game plays more like a traditional beat-em-up, and is way more forgiving. And even the Battletoad elements like the speed bikes and rope descents are much more measured. But it was probably too late by the summer of '93, when the NES's best days were behind it. Beauty and the Bestiality was only released in Europe, towards the very end of the console's life, and well into the Super Nintendo era. There's this weird screen tilt when you duck or press up, like they were trying to increase your vision range. Combine that with a few where the fuck do I go-isms, and you got yourself a case of spousal abuse. B-52 has you bumbling around collecting honey from flowers and returning it to the nest. You can choose to play the left-hand side or the right side levels, but you're dedicated to one set for each playthrough, which is a missed opportunity. There's a smattering of bugs, upgradable firepower, and bombs you can acquire, but the sprinklers serve as a deterrent to anyone who tries soaking up some fun. You can't play Beetlejuice unless you look up precisely what to do. You're given mechanics like the bug stomp that doesn't kill bugs, and special abilities that are required to progress and cost too much to buy, and are gone before you know it. There's tons of esoteric design choices, like holding A and down to drop through holes, to reach critical areas. Just stay the hell away from Beetlejuice. Best of the Best Championship Karate is a contender for the worst presentation. The inputs have several seconds of latency, and whenever you do land a hit, the ref stops the match. There's a training mode where you and a friend can simultaneously waste time. You would think by looking at it that this came out in the early days of NES. But it didn't. Can you imagine throwing $40 at this back in the day? Bible Adventures gets mocked and ridiculed all the time, but it's actually a savior compared to some of the previous titles. There's 3 games all pretty similar, and none of them very compelling. 2 of them have you carrying animals over to an arrow. The other one has you dying in front of baby Moses. At least there's hints scattered around the stages, some of which are disguised as Bible verses. Bible Buffet is a wacky little action game where you're sent by God to destroy the local food supply. There's a wide variety of environments to keep your palate clean, and the announcer has one of the clearest voice samples I ever heard on the NES.
Alright!
The biggest sin is that the in-game Bible questions need to be referenced from a book that came in the box. But don't worry, all truth is relative, right?
Player 1.
Big Nose Freaks Out is a cross between Sonic the Hedgehog and the Flintstones, with that signature lack of polish that makes Camerica games stand out among their licensed competitors. There's 20 levels full of secret areas and bones to collect, so there's plenty of replay. But it's a shame they couldn't round out the experience by adding a musical budget. Big Nose the Caveman reminds me of Adventure Island, but it has its own unique charm and playstyle. You can find dinosaur testicles to upgrade your club into a formidable projectile, and there's a shop you can trade in your bones for useful items. There's often a new boss at the end of each stage, and plenty of surprises and mechanics introduced along the way. Bigfoot is split into two parts, an overhead racer and a side view monster truck show. Both modes have you mashing buttons to see what's less consequential, and two people can play through the campaign together. The objective is to earn more money than your opponent, which can also be used to upgrade your truck. But don't overthink any of it, because Bigfoot is all about just having some big dumb fun. Bill and Ted's excellent video game adventure emphasized the most bogus elements of the time. Start with having to flip through a phone book to type in a number to play a stupid minigame that doesn't work just to begin each level. And the isometric view and control scheme is the worst I've ever had to endure. And good luck figuring out what to do. Bill Elliott's NASCAR Challenge lets you drive 3 vehicles on 4 tracks, 2 of them being road courses, and the other 2 are a competition to see who can turn left. The visuals on the oval courses take a bit of imagination, but you can always hop into the pits and pop on some killer chiptune while the guys jack you up. Bingo 75 has nothing to do with bingo, and everything to do with having to scam you into playing an electronic video fruit machine. Many of these Sachin games had limited standalone releases in regions like Australia, but new sealed in-box copies always seemed to pop up on eBay one at a time, continuing the con game that was Bingo 75. Bionic Commando was supposed to be Capcom's hegemon, but the inability to jump is at odds with its walk-and-gun playstyle. The bionic grappling hook takes a while to get used to, and figuring out which ceilings can be climbed is a hindrance. But being able to choose locations makes the experience more open-ended and worthy of additional operations. Black Bass's fishing mechanics are such a well-guarded secret that even the manual refuses to go into detail, because discovering patterns is the real bait and hook here. Lures come in different shapes and colors, and you can move around the lake looking for the best spot. I recommend the Western Sewage Canal. Blackjack does what it's supposed to do, as a digitally interactive replacement for the rudimentary card game. There's a handful of colors and card styles to choose from, and if you break the bank you win. All the features are here, including split and doubles, and the cards come out fast. You can play with 2 hands at a time by choosing 2 players, and Billy Joel is still waiting for his music royalties. Blades of Steel combines the best of ice hockey and fisticuffs. Offsides are ignored, and the only time you get penalized is for not kicking your opponent's ass fast enough. Shots are automatically aimed by the moving arrow on your defender's goal, and it works out great. My only gripe is that there's no use of the A button on defense, with only the B button being used to choose who's currently electrocuted. Blaster Master is a hybridized adventure, featuring platforming sections and top-down shooter dungeons, and has seen a resurgence with Blaster Master Zero. The tank buggy is a good gimmick, and it's fun to drive, and the upgrades after each boss fight expand your mobility. The amount of exploration is compelling and not too confusing, so look up Ass Blaster if you want to try something new. Blue Marlin expands on Black Bass by letting you troll in your boat and providing a better visual of what's happening. The main idea is to lean back in your chair by pressing down, then release and hold A for a while to reel the fish in. Your stats improve with every catch, giving you a better chance at killing a dolphin. Just avoid mashing the D-pad as it makes you look like a total spaz. Somebody acquired the licensing rights to the Blues Brothers, and quickly retrofit one of their pet projects, and released it without any game testing. The controls and level design seem mismatched at best, with lots of jumps that aren't particularly inviting, and enemies that you're just better off avoiding, since they seem to have confiscated your firearm. Bo-Jackson Baseball is all about big figures and shadowy ass cracks. It's interesting to see all the different versions of 8-bit baseball on the Nintendo, but Bo-Jackson trades ball physics for high-fidelity sprites and sound effects.
He was safe by a mile!
And thanks to the use of save states, it's easy to see how little influence you have over the direction of the ball. Bomberman's humble beginnings as a domestic terrorist began in a concrete basement in front of a green screen. The initial stages are slow with only a single bomb that can be placed, and a blast radius of 1. So making progress becomes easier as more upgrades and items are acquired. Somebody get this guy an alibi because co-op and versus are noticeably absent. Bomberman 2 improves upon the previous title in every way. More enemies, more color palettes, and a basic but engaging battle mode for up to 3 players. You can also find upgrades faster, increasing your rank as a federal officer. This way you'll be planting explosives and framing people in no time. Bonk's Adventure was supposed to be the flagship title for the TurboGrafx 16 console. Once that fizzled, there was a last-ditch effort to get Bonk on the NES. Due to its limited availability and cross-platform IP, it's one of the most sought-after games for collectors. His headbutt attack overlaps with his fluttering ability, causing some control confusion, but it's still a decent adventure. Booky Man, also known as Brush Roller, is a total ripoff of the arcade game Make Tracks. The object is to make tracks that cover the entire maze. The problem is that the maze never changes, and it's just a skin swap each time. And they give you 9 lives because they know that the enemies are unfair. And what the hell is a Booky Man anyway? Could be a registered sex offender for all we know. Boulder Dash sounds like something that may come out of your butthole, but it's a formidable action game with heavy puzzle elements that try to kill you. The goal is to collect diamonds and reach the door, but sometimes you gotta kill animals or trap germs. There's 3 new game pluses that require more pickups or remixes the original layout, for a total of 96 levels. Go hard. Bram Stoker's Dracula is a shocking entry, mainly because every other movie license on the NES was a nightmare. It has all the cornerstones of a quality 8-bit platformer, like secret passages, abundant items, and graphical assets lifted directly from Super Mario Bros. Just make sure you don't play on easy mode, or else you'll be given a game over screen after killing a naked man on level 2. Break Time, the National Pool Tour, features 8-ball, 9-ball, 14-1, and rotation. You can play against 4 degrees of AI, but problems occur at higher levels, where the women take too long to make a shot. At lower levels it plays relatively well, and you can even add English, or sit back and watch the programmers demonstrate trick shots. Breakthrough is a buggy shooter where it's one hit you're dead. There's a lot of hazards that come up on you fast, where you need the momentum to make the jump, so it quickly becomes a game of memorization. The infinite continues offsets the high difficulty, but there's only 5 levels, and once it's over, you'll realize how short and meaningless everything is. Bubble Bath Babes tries selling itself as adult entertainment, but most of the girls shown between levels are fairly modest looking. There's 2 game variations where you rotate bubble clusters to form adjacent colors. Both are very repetitive, and rely heavily on luck of the draw. Occasionally you'll be given a flashing bubble to spice things up, but only a jack-off would actually play this. Bubble Bobble is the game to play if you want some top-tier couch co-op. The trippy levels, variety of items, and cute sprites make this a good introduction for girlfriends who might be reluctant to gaming. We've seen the series rebooted several times over the years, but they've never been able to capture the elegance of the original. Don't forget to play the secret levels in Second Quest. Bubble Bobble Part 2 is a good solo experience, but the removal of simultaneous 2-player is unacceptable. It seems like the devs got caught up in adding more gameplay elements, Some of them work like boss battles and holding your breath to float to the top. Others are completely unnecessary like the deadly spikes and the longest game of volleyball ever. Bucky O'Hare is a solid platformer that leans hard, with different characters to collect that have unique abilities, so it's sometimes compared to Mega Man. My biggest beef is that certain characters are required for some parts, which gives a false sense of decision when playing through the opening levels, so it's actually a pretty linear adventure. Birthday Blowout is not a gift you receive at your first brothel, but a family-friendly platformer featuring Bugs Bunny and friends. The levels are varied with different pathways, but most of them can be plowed through in a couple minutes. It's highly approachable, but still suitable for more hardcore players if you want to grab all the carrots that can be spent on bonus games. Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle was known as Roger Rabbit in Japan, but it was made easier in the West and given character swaps due to licensing agreements. You can't jump or attack, with the exception of heavy objects placed throughout the stages. The goal is to walk around rooms collecting carrots and avoid getting your breast fondled by Sylvester the cat. Bump and Jump's main protagonist needs to rescue his girlfriend and kill a bunch of innocent drivers along the way in order to get a high score. Truck drivers will seek revenge by unloading their trash in front of you, all over the course of 16 action-fueled levels. Just make sure to pick up cans to pee in so you don't have to pull over. Burai Fighter is a side-scrolling space shooter where you play as a floating man instead of a spaceship. Upgrades stack and eventually have you shooting in all directions, including out of your ass. There's enough mix-ups going on with direction changes, boss battles, and some bird's-eye view stages. Burai Fighter may have a misleading title, so try it out if you like shooters. Burger Time was lifted directly from the arcade, and so was the difficulty. There's 6 levels where you need to walk over ingredients to make burgers, which is pretty much the industry standard for fast food restaurants today. The trick is to lure the hot dogs into a sausage fest and pepper them all at the same time, as crushing them will only cause them to respawn. There you have it, another couple hundreds of hours condensed into 20-something minutes of entertainment. Since you made it this far, it's safe to say you enjoyed some parts of the video, so make sure you blast it across the internet so I can continue this project without killing myself, and check the description to see how else you can support Game Test Play.